Today is the 16th of December. In 1971, India fought a 13-day war that ended today with the creation of Bangladesh. Now, since the August of this year, after the ouster of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, India-Bangladesh relations have taken a nosedive. This ouster and the subsequent appointment of Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus as the head of the caretaker government has been a turning point within Bangladesh. It has witnessed widespread communal violence against minorities, especially the Hindus. Extremist groups such as the Jamaat-e-Islami have been allowed to operate freely. Temples are being desecrated, communities terrorized, and families driven to flee the country. Not just that, there are efforts to erase the legacy of Mujibur Rahman, the founding father of Bangladesh, by removing his images and monuments. Inflation, meanwhile, is spiraling out of control in Bangladesh, and Bangladesh's foreign exchange reserves have plummeted. The deposed Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has called Muhammad Yunus a fascist, seeking to stifle the spirit of the liberation war of Bangladesh. Now, Muhammad Yunus has just announced general elections to be held between the end of 2025 and the first half of 2026. The question is, what made him finally announce elections? What does this mean for the situation in Bangladesh, for the Bangladeshis? Why has the Bangladesh interim government not been able to establish law and order? How much does the change of the government in the US has led to the elections finally being announced in Bangladesh? From trying to reduce its reliance on India to accusing India of attempting to undermine the caretaker government, Bangladesh-India relations have soured. What will be the impact of these elections in Bangladesh on India, the neighbor that played a key role in its liberation? Joining us to discuss that, our former Indian diplomat and President, India Habitat Center, Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us. We also have Suhas Chakma, Director, Rights and Risks Analysis Group, joining us. Thank you, Suhas, for taking time out to be with us, sir. So let me begin by asking Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, talk to us. The situation in Bangladesh, to put it in simple terms, has gone from bad to worse. The question now is, with the elections now being announced, is it a sign of things to change and hopefully to change for the better?
I'm sorry to sound negative on your panel, but these elections have been delayed far too long. According to the Bangladesh constitution, there is no provision for such an extended period of a so-called interim regime. The interim regime should have called elections within 3 months, that is to say between August and November. Now it has been announced that it's the end of 25, beginning of 26, which means there's full 12 calendar months to go, and my presumption is that this is in order for Muhammad Yunus to encourage the extremist students to establish their own political party, to give time for the Jamaat to establish themselves, and to give more time for attacks on minorities, on supporters of the Awami League, on other minorities, including, I may add, Ahmadiyyas, Sufis, Christians, Buddhists, etc., and to try to push out the major minority community, that is the Hindus, 1.5 crore of them, as many of them outside Bangladesh as possible. For that, he needs these 12 or 13 calendar months. As far as the Bangladesh economy is concerned, it will result in a complete economic crisis which will affect every section of the Bangladeshi lower middle class and the poorer people.
Right.
And it might very well result in a situation where Muhammad Yunus's supporters will not win if the election is free and fair. So it's a double gamble, a double whammy that he's taken on, and only time can tell what is going to happen. I don't think that the inauguration of President Trump on 20th January has influenced this decision. He has been under great pressure from the BNP to announce elections, but the BNP was expecting elections to be held within the next 3 months, not at the end of next year. So I don't think this will please the BNP either. We have to
Right.
wait and see that.
Right, Suhas, talk about too little too late. This election, it seems to be a ground being set up for the caretaker government to ensure the outcome is the only one that they want.
Well, absolutely. This government has no mandate. Whatever reforms he's talking about for holding elections, including election reforms, they are not mandated. The government itself is illegal if you look at it. Even if you are to assume that there is a caretaker government, it has to be on for 3 months. So if they are going to, extend it till next year, not only 2025, because he said after 2025 he may need another 6 months. So we are talking about possibly in 2026, and so the government itself is illegal. Anything and everything he is doing illegal. This electoral reforms he is talking about, he has no mandate to do whatsoever. He even doesn't have the mandate to introduce any ordinance amendments and etc. So they don't have any mandate whatsoever to take this kind of decision. So he has taken these decisions, as Madam Ghosh had already mentioned. BNP had said day before yesterday, Tariq Ji had mentioned that people have the right to know the roadmap from this government, and whenever they ask for the roadmap, they should not feel angered by it or etc. So the reaction of the Jamaat Islami and the chief advisor is actually not to give a roadmap. So now they have given a roadmap, and this roadmap, as I say, I think I completely agree with what Madam had mentioned, that they are possibly going to announce the political party in March and April by the students, because what they are looking at, the current government is looking at, is that they want not only minus Sheikh Hasina, they want a government minus BNP. So this whole ideology of bringing out only the Islamic fundamentalists is the only reason why he has announced it, and he has announced it so that nobody could put pressure on him. So because of the change in the administration in the US, he has not announced it. He had announced this basically to ambush, the Trump administration, so that nobody else could come, including the Trump administration, could come and tell him to organize the election in 3 months' time. Now he has announced the election, to be held 1.5 years later. So he has effectively ambushed the American government, the incoming American government, and I could possibly should go as far as saying that this is something which has been done with Democratic government, in the US before they are, going out of power. They are doing lots of things, and this announcement, you can't prove it. I'm sure, somewhere the American administration, the current administration, has advised Yunus that you announce in this manner, then you have some time do whatever you want to do. And if you look at events all over the world, the events in Ukraine, which was quite unthinkable, the Ukrainian government using the Americans and the British armory against the Russians. Then you have the Syrians suddenly, falling apart. So that, if this Assad government had not fallen, then, America and the Trump administration would be at war with Russia in Syria. So, number of measures which the Americans are taking, and the decision by Yunus administration is only part of that.
Ambassador Basi Mukherjee, the question I have to ask you is that what do you think made Mohammad Yunus and his caretaker government even announce these elections?
I would completely agree with my co-panelists that you cannot rule out the American deep state because there have been certain strange developments in the last 6 weeks which appear to indicate the hand of the American deep state before Trump comes to power. And as he said, I would agree with him that this is in order to preempt any pressure from the Trump administration post 20th January to announce elections and to hold free and fair elections with all parties, BNP, Awami League, all political parties, within 3 months of the Trump administration coming to power, that is to say, give or take, by the end of March 2025. I would actually think that he has made this announcement, but there is nothing to stop the Trump administration from telling Yunus that this is too far a deadline. Okay. The country is falling apart, and prepone and have free and fair elections, where we will send election observers from the European Union, from the United States, from the UN, etc., which is what is often done when you have this kind of a situation. So I don't think that we have heard the end of it at all. But any effort by Yunus to try to keep the BNP out of free and fair elections will result in widespread rioting and perhaps the coming together of Awami League and BNP as they have in the past. Because the BNP has also said that they don't think that the Awami League should be kept out of the election. They want a free and fair election which is internationally recognized, and they feel that they can win a free and fair election. That is up to the people of Bangladesh to decide who they
Right.
want in power. If it's a free and fair election, whoever wins is the legitimate government of Bangladesh, whereas the present government is actually illegitimate because it has exceeded the time permitted in the Bangladeshi constitution more than 3 months to organize these elections. Moreover, the students have not yet organized themselves, and he is giving them time so that a new political party can come up, which he hopes can hijack these elections and bring them into power. And these are very dangerous developments, particularly for India, given the fact that we have such a huge land boundary with Bangladesh, and given the kind of hostility that is being manifested towards India on a daily basis and towards minorities. It actually is an extremely serious development to think that elections in Bangladesh, if ever they are to be held, have been postponed in this manner, possibly for not just 1 year, but 15 months. And who knows, after 15 months, he may try to postpone it again. So, in effect, we are in a situation where Bangladesh is slipping into non-democratic rule,
Right.
despite the clear intent of the political parties in Bangladesh to insist on free and fair elections, including the BNP.
Right. Suhas, the question here is that it will be the Bangladeshis who will suffer, it will be the minorities who will suffer until that election is held. And this caretaker government, which is already breaching so many norms by holding an election so late, by announcing elections to be held so late, has been extremely unsuccessful in keeping law and order on ground. So it doesn't have the merits to continue for very long.
Well, they do not have any merits, and I agree with what Madam Mukherjee mentioned, that that they will fall apart. And I think 1.5 years time is too long. I mean, people expect the government to deliver on basic issues, whether it's employment, job security, or basic law and order. And in Dhaka and elsewhere, you cannot go out. And the kind of violence which is taking place across the country, it's actually a jungle raj. Even if you go to the police stations, police will not take up the case. So it's not some social media creation. If you are a minority, of course, you are at the receiving end more than the others. But across the spectrum, there is no rule of law. And the problem is, this government actually, even though Mohammed Yunus is the head of the government, they are actually not tied to each other. They have never worked together. And every advisor is acting with his or her own whims and fancies. There is no coordination even to run the government. In fact, the military are not intervening, because if they intervene or they use the the powers which is given to them, that's the magisterial powers, then they will be held accountable. So there is absolute fear, because the country is being run not only against the minorities, but against the general population with actually mob sentiment. So when you have a mob rule, obviously, it will lead to complete injustice. So nobody can feel secure. You cannot go out your own home and feel secure. So those things are not being reported on a daily basis, because there are far too many incidents to report. So there is no rule of law. And at the end of the day, I think you have to remember one thing: Yunus is not an administrator, and possibly if you could sense when he speaks, he even doesn't realize the implication of the words he is using or the way he is speaking. He is a Nobel laureate. He is treating himself as demigod in Bangladesh, when he is actually a local union parishad chairman kind of a mentality. So that's why we have a situation where I think the interim government is bound to fail for a number of reasons. At the moment, it is surviving because it is getting enough loans from the ADB as well as the, the IMF. So some of the banks are giving funds. But once these funds run through, where is he going to get it from? I mean, if you look at the entire garments industry, in the last quarter, the garments industry in India had grown by 13%. The garment industry had grown by 15% in Vietnam, and Bangladesh was barely 5%. Now you have a series of strikes in the garment industry. So they do not even have enough foreign reserves, and it's the country where people are going to invest because their rating, as given by the Moody's in the last report, it was about B2, which is a junk status. So nobody is going to come. So there are no funds whatsoever. And at this point in time, even the government employees are not being paid salaries. So he's ruling a country, thinking that he's getting enough money, and he's blaming everything on Sheikh Hasina, but nothing is functioning there. If you do not pay enough money to the gundas of the BNP or the Jamaat-e-Islami or the students, you cannot operate. So in that kind of a situation, the government has to collapse. And my fear is the Bangladesh government will collapse before that, and the implications for India would be very dangerous.
Right. I was about to ask that, Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, isn't it? What can India do to shield itself from all that's going on across the border?
We need to be very vigilant. In my perspective, but that's a decision the government and the armed forces have to take. We should move at least another battalion to the Indo-Bangladesh border. We should seal the border. We should make sure that there are no illegal crossings, and we should make it very clear that those who are being targeted in this manner are Bangladeshi citizens, and that Bangladesh and its constitution was created on the basis that the Bengali language, culture and civilization is more important for people in Bangladesh than religion. It was on that basis that it was called a secular constitution. It was on that basis that the father of the Bangladeshi nation, whose name is now being taken out even from banknotes in Bangladesh, it was on that basis that Bangladesh was created. So they have to give protection to their minorities, and we have to protect our citizens in the east, in West Bengal, my home state, in Assam, in the northeast, etc. And we have to, if necessary, bring in more forces of Indian Armed Forces to ensure that no illegal border crossings take place. And you might have heard the laughable pronouncements of some retired Bangladeshi army officers boasting that they're going to annex West Bengal, Assam, Northeast, and create an Islamic caliphate in that area. It is laughable, but it is also dangerous, because in my perspective, it shows that unless Yunus understands what is happening, Bangladesh is sliding towards fascism. And when a state becomes fascist, then all its neighbors have to be very careful. We will be very careful, and I was very proud of the response given by the West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, who said, "Do it. Do you think that when you will be coming, we will be eating lollipops and waiting for you?" I think that was very well said by Mrs. Mamata Banerjee.
All right, we will leave it at that. I'm afraid we're completely out of time over here. Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee and Suhas Chakma, thank you so much for taking time out to speak to us here on the News 9 Plus show.